agriculture and also in business in Africa. I met Agnes Kalibata there. I met Arne Cartridge, who's now part of the Yara team, and Strive Masiva. All have been, I would say, essential for me in how to run Yara and how to focus on Africa and how important that is. So mentorship is not only important for young people, but also middle-aged, or what my children would call me, for old people as well. It's important to have mentorships and to discuss and drive this forward. And for us as a company, we're trying to institutionalize this and drive that throughout our business, and especially when it comes to young people. And that was the outcome of and that was the really what we started discussing in Zambia 8 years ago together with Arne, Agnes, and Strive. How do we make the step change in yields and increasing the yields in Africa? Well, it's bringing youth into agriculture to use technology and their ingenuity and drive to get this done, and then we need to create arenas for that, and that was the start of what is now Generation Africa and the GoGettaz, and that's been truly inspiring. And for us in Yara, we have the Yara Leadership Academy. This is really an ecosystem that is now being strengthened, and we see that when young people succeed and see the business opportunities to this, how powerful that is. So far, we've had 1,000 young professionals go through that program, and that really is demonstrating very good results. And also connecting with the GoGettaz to help to get a formal degree as well. And we teamed up with the University of Utah, that is one of the most successful entrepreneurship programs in the U.S. to connect with the finalists to help them to get a degree and also to get inspiration to drive their businesses forward. And I was just in contact with the University of Utah, and they really giving extremely good feedback on the drive and the quality of the participants in that. So it's really making an impact and at scale, and we see what is possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Over to Ndidi.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't even know what time it is anymore. So I'll start like Centurion and start with a personal story. So I was born and raised in Nigeria, and I moved to the US at 16 to start college. And I was confronted with the face of Africa being a hungry child. People used to tell me, my mom says, finish your dinner, there are starving children in Africa. And this was a picture that really upset me because it was a single story. It's a dangerous single story because there's hunger all over the world. Africa does not have a hold on that narrative. And what has shocked me over the last 30 years is that this narrative hasn't changed. And as an entrepreneur, I've worked extensively through Sahel Consulting, ACE Foods, Leap Africa to build institutions in Africa that not only create wealth, create jobs, but also change narratives. And my son just started college about 3 years ago, and I asked him, what narrative do you want to change about Africa? And he said the same thing I experienced 30 years earlier. And so I decided to start a new organization called African Food Changemakers. It's the latest organization in the series of organizations I've been involved in. And African Food Changemakers is really focused on grooming 1 million entrepreneurs who will not only nourish Africa, but change global narratives. And what we're doing is providing data, funding, support, a community. We call it the DevX, LinkedIn, and Facebook for ag and food entrepreneurs. It's a free online community, but we are also providing intense training to help entrepreneurs scale, to help entrepreneurs trade, and to help them change narratives. So in this AGRA, AGRF, we actually brought 22 women who are part of our Leading Women in Food Fellowship, and they're coming to AGRF for the first time, actually build networks and change narratives. And through our BRACE program, we're empowering entrepreneurs to green their businesses by providing access to knowledge, training, and funding around climate financing. And then through the Scaling Export Program, we're getting our products on global shelves. And the last thing we're doing is creating original content, podcasts, and docu-series, which we're getting into international press to tell positive stories from Africa. Through our podcasts on teff, on rubbers, on okra, on cocoa, on chocolates, we're changing the narrative. And we're telling people, like my friend Ed Mbaya says, if you've had a Coca-Cola, coffee today, you have Africa to thank for it. So I think that collectively, and that's why GoGettaz and all the initiatives that AGRA is supporting and Yara is supporting, we need to continue to scale our businesses, help our young people believe they're leaders of today, and ensure collectively we build strong African brands that can be celebrated globally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here on this panel and to talk about Heifer International. We are a global organization that's focused on addressing hunger, poverty, and caring for the earth by working with smallholder farmer families. We have this aspirational goal of reaching 10 million farmer families get a sustainable living income by 2030. Are we there yet? Not quite. And what I would say is that the only way we're going to get there is through partnerships, and that we pay attention to what farmers tell us that they need. In Africa, we are in 9 countries, and one of the things that we've been focusing on has been with youth, and looking at youth as being a demographic dividend going to pay off. And the way that we've done that is created the Ayute Challenge, which supports and catalyzes youth to come up with technologies, to support them in their technologies for agriculture, but also to think about the full value chain of not just giving them the money to make the technology happen, but to provide the mentoring that's required, to think about the social barriers, don't make them investable. And we want to partner with everyone here on this panel, plus all of you out there, to think about ways of creating and supporting youth to be investable. What does it take to de-risk supporting them? And how can we, as organizations that are supporting them, provide that collateral so that they can do the things that they need to do to ensure that, you know, agriculture becomes the driver, that they're part of the engine that drives that sector. So I'm very proud to be here.
I'm Simon Winter. I'm the Executive Director of the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture. And continuing on the narratives train, I spent 20 years of my life living mostly in Southern Africa. And in that period, I did research in Zimbabwe on how to industrialize that country. And that led me to 2 major insights. One was the importance of supporting local SMEs and entrepreneurs to grow growth businesses. And the second thing was the importance of having a very supportive environment around those entrepreneurs to enable them to access good technologies, build their skills and capabilities as entrepreneurs, and build growth businesses. Our foundation has taken that forward on the agricultural production side. So I think when we think about GoGettaz, it's a wonderful initiative, and we're very excited to support it. But one of the things that's particularly important is that we support grassroots entrepreneurs in low-income, underserved communities to thrive and become successful. Not only the food processing entrepreneurs and the digital entrepreneurs who are often based in towns and cities. And then secondly, that as much as celebrating those individual entrepreneurs and supporting them is important, we also need to build the ecosystems. And that's an area we're working very closely with Generation Africa on, is how do you build a national ecosystem that supports the ability and opportunity for young agri-entrepreneurs and food entrepreneurs to thrive and become successful, and as Ndidi says, change the narratives around this.
Excellent. A round of applause for panelists. Thank you very much. This is a powerful panelist, like you've heard, ladies and gentlemen. They are doing great initiatives at their own areas of work. And what Simon said about strengthening the ecosystem is trying to bring all these partnerships together so that we don't operate in silos. And the journey begins from opening the door for the young people to come in and then coaching them and mentoring them towards being successful agripreneurs. And so mentorship is something that I know is very close to the heart of Svein Torre. And so Svein, I'll pose the question to you. I think we will have the questions later. I'll pose the questions to you that how can communities and businesses come together to offer effective mentorship programs for the young people? So they've told me the microphone is working, so you can just put it on. And thank you.
Well, can you hear me? Yeah. First of all, in order to bring businesses and communities together to provide these mentorships, it's recognizing the importance of it, and well, as was mentioned already here, to communicate this in the right way, to create the right narrative and the business opportunity linked to the whole food system, to agribusiness, and what that means here in Africa and across the world. That really farming and food business isn't this say the older impression of what it is. This is really a future-oriented business. If you take Africa in isolation, probably $50 to $75 billion worth of food imports every year. Well, that's a huge opportunity. If you look at population growth, it will add on top of it. So this is a real business opportunity. So let's start recognizing that and creating that narrative, and also how technologically advanced farming is or could be already today. We don't really need a lot in breakthrough technology or new innovations or miracles or magic here. It's about utilizing the technology that is already there and making that available out in the communities. And to get that done, we need partnerships across businesses to create full value chains for communities to recognize this, so that we bring it to the youth in the community, so that they see the opportunity as well. And it's also about consistency. You make upfront investments in terms of education and equipment and so on, and that you have a predictable framework around this, so that you lessen the risk as well for the young entrepreneurs. But it's also for us learning equally much the other way as well. I was in a small community outside Nairobi back in November, and met with some young people that call themselves like farmer influencers, and you see the reach that they have, and how quickly the messages spread across, and how they work together. I think that's a big inspiration to us running businesses as well, that we need to be much better at that, and thinking collectively and how we create this enabling environment. So for me, at the end of the day, it's about partnerships, it's about predictable framework and investing, really. Thanks.
Excellent. We are also looking forward to these kind of partnerships, and for sure in the future we're looking at partnering with Yara Leadership Academy and bringing it more closer to Generation Africa. Thanks for that. I'll move on to Ndidi. And Ndidi, my follow-up question for you is, how can partnerships that Svein Torre mentioned ensure that then the initiatives promote equal opportunities for both young men and women?
Thank you very much. So I would say that there's still a huge gender gap in the food ecosystem in Africa, and we see this reflected not just at farm level, but also across the board. I always joke that the term middlemen assumes that there are no middle women. And it's in logistics, it's in processing, it's in financing, technology, etc. And so to really close the gender gap, especially for young women, we need to do a few things. The first one is that we need to embed clear inclusion in every intervention that we design. Yesterday we had a lot of discussions about what it means to be included and what inclusion is, and I know that's a term that's very widely used today. But from my perspective, inclusion means that no one is left behind. And to leave no one behind, it means that in our design, we actually have to level the playing field. And we take it for granted as ecosystem actors that it's, you know, that when we have a few women at the table, we've addressed that problem. But it's not enough to have a few women at the table. You actually have to have clear quotas. And I'll tell you, with every program we've implemented at African Food Changemakers, because we've set quotas, we have to have 50% women, we have to have 30% women, whatever it is. It means that we have to go out and find partner organizations that work with women. It means we have to spend extra effort to find them, because if you take it for granted that they will apply, they don't. And that's why yesterday we actually partnered with Award to have a session, a side event. And that was a forced partnership by AGRA because we both submitted ideas. So where there are organizations that work with women at the grassroots, faith-based organizations, private sector organizations, partnership is key to ensuring that we find women, we encourage them to take advantage of initiatives, and we amplify their work. The second thing is explicit mentoring and coaching. And I'm just earlier this year, with the support of the SCORE Foundation, launched the Leading Women in Food Fellowship. And you say another fellowship, do we need another one? Absolutely. But what's different about this fellowship? It's not just women entrepreneurs or young women entrepreneurs, it's young women influencers, bloggers, disruptors, financiers, enablers, chefs, bringing them together to meet each other to create a sisterhood. Because that sisterhood is important. There are a lot of old boys networks and young boys networks, but we don't have enough women networks where women are supporting each other and rising together. And as I mentioned, I brought 22 of them to AGRF, and they have never been. Usually chefs will say, I don't have a place at AGRF. Food journalists and bloggers, unless I'm a big food blogger, nobody's gonna fund me to come. And having them come together and meet each other from across Africa has been amazing. And for me, it's a legacy project, because some of us have been around for too long. I first came to Yara in 2008 to Norway for the first Yara conference, and Borlaug was there. Adeshina got a prize there. And so why am I still talking? Other women should be here talking. And that's what we need to do, is to step out of the way for the younger generation. And that's why I've created the Leading Women in Food Fellowship. And then the third thing is, I think we need to be explicit about holding our funders and our partners accountable. How should we do this? Every time a funder is giving funds, ask what percentage of that funding is going to women-led businesses? What percentage of that funding is going to women-led nonprofits and local organizations? And if we track that information and track that data, we'll find out that we're not equitable in our funding, and we're not equitable in ensuring that we have women on boards, women in leadership. And I think if we don't track the funding and ensure equitable financing, and I'm going to say, Yara is here, Syngenta Foundation, I'm not going to ask you to tell us your numbers, but next time I see you, we're going to hold you accountable. What percentage of funding is going to women-led businesses? And if you don't have an equitable amount going through, even Heifer, then what are you going to do to change it? And what action plan can you put in place? And the answer to that action plan is partnerships, because we know where the women are. Work with us, work with GoGettaz, work with others to find the dynamic women who you can invest in to ensure that we close this gender gap in our lifetime. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ndidi. And that's why when we were setting up this panel, we made sure that we have 50-50. You know, 50%, man. Yeah, I'm out of this, so. Yeah, so I'll move over to Surita. And Surita, these partnerships that Ndidi talked about, how can we utilize them to equip people with skills that are future-proof, especially the young people? because the industry is definitely evolving. So they need skills that are future-proof.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Ndidi about, inclusion, creating the platform for women to be much more engaged, for us to be held accountable, for donors to be held accountable. And it's interesting that, you have all of us as panelists, and I think that's an intention so that we are able to build that partnership and realistically showcase how we are actually walking the talk. So at Heifer, it's been, a real focus on working with partnerships, really looking at working with government, private sector, other nonprofit organizations, because we have a way of working with smallholder farmer families, but we don't know everything. And it's really important to bring in other organizations that are looking at other issues concerning the environment, looking at income, all of that. And just to say, I didn't give you my personal story. I've been in this role for less than a year, so forgive me if I look at my notes, only because I don't want to get the examples I'm going to give you wrong. And if you're interested in what Heifer's been doing, we actually have a booth that will, and you can talk to many of our country directors and program managers specifically about the work that we're doing in country. But there are two examples that I want to talk about in East Africa. One has been our East Africa Youth Inclusion Program, which we've partnered with MasterCard Foundation, who provide funding, and also with the Ugandan and Tanzanian authorities to empower youth to basically focus on our goal of ending hunger and poverty and basically creating jobs through technology. And we've been equipping these young people with the skills necessary. We've enabled them to drive innovation in agribusiness, and we've integrated technology and finance as enablers. And this supports them to identify and exploit agribusiness opportunities. So far, in terms of numbers, we've reached 25,000 young people in both Uganda and Tanzania. And we want to multiply that. And given that the Tanzanian government just talked about youth, I think it's really important to build the partnerships with government so that we can expand. The other issue that we have focused on has been around working around mechanization with Hello Tractors and pay as you go. And what we've done is we've catalyzed the funding to support them so that they can provide mechanizations to smallholder farmer families. It's essentially working with young people, it's essentially working with women, and we put in our own funds that we've raised ourselves, and we've leveraged that with other funders and with the government. And what we want to do is think about ways of sustaining that. And that does mean, again, working with government, private sector, and making sure that we're also listening to the young people about what their needs are. And one of the things that we're clear about, and we've talked about mentorship, that's critical. You mentioned fellowships. I don't think we can have too many fellowships. What I think we should be doing with these fellowships is we should be aggregating that. The same way we're aggregating produce, we should be aggregating these fellowships, bringing them all together so that they can learn from each other. And that's going to expand the engagement with youth.
Excellent. I like the sound of aggregating fellowships, just so that we can have a deeper impact in everything that we do. So I'll move over to Simon. And Simon, as we do this and try to aggregate all the fellowships, there is a youth who is kind of disadvantaged at the rural setup. And there's a lot of rural to urban migration. They come to the urban cities to try and look for jobs. Could you please tell us your insights about how we can curb that and make sure that the rural youth is also included?
Great, thanks. Before I answer that question, I just want to answer Ndidi's challenge. about involving women and getting to parity on gender outcomes and impacts. This has been something we committed to in our strategy in 2021. At that time, I think if you looked at the entrepreneurs we were supporting and the farmers we were supporting, it was hovering probably below 20% of the portfolio. And we made all the deliberate efforts that Ndidi's talking about. By the end of 2022, we were up to about 35% women entrepreneurs being supported. And, but the women farmer number was lagging. But in the first half results of 2023, we're seeing the women farmer numbers now coming up very strongly, because women farmers will trust and want to work with a woman entrepreneur much more than a man. So if you invest in the women entrepreneurs, then the women farmers and women community members and so on will respond, and they will follow. And the numbers are growing very handsomely. But I want to talk to you further about how we get to 50% by 2025, which is our target. But we're on the way. So coming back to Dickson's point, I just want to give you a couple of examples of women entrepreneurs that we've been supporting in West Africa, who are high talent people who arguably, you know, it's surprising in a way that they're now living and working in low-income rural communities, because in the first case of Ifeoluwa Oyeyemi, she has a BSc and a master's in animal nutrition and biotechnology, Nigerian woman, but she was struggling to get a job, couldn't find a job, and then enrolled in the National Youth Service Corps and ended up back in the rural areas, and decided actually that what she wanted to do was become a change maker for low-income farmers in rural Nigeria. And within the first year was building a business based on growing seedlings in a nursery, serving about 2,500 farmers, and her first year revenue was over $70,000. Now, this needed support, she needed encouragement, she needed training, mentorship, coaching, and so on in order to achieve this. But she's well on her way. And in Senegal, we have a woman who's, I think now about 3 years into her business, Animatu, and she also was living in Dakar, was actually looking to emigrate to France, tried a couple of times, was unsuccessful in that, and then got inspired to go back to her community of origin, and is now running her father's farm, has 3 nurseries, has many employees, serving many farmers also with seedling products and other inputs and market opportunities and so on. So this opportunity space, creating the opportunity that is attractive, and then the support mechanisms that can enable farmers, or let's say youth from farming families, to become entrepreneurial change makers in their communities, especially women, can then become this bridgehead into the empowerment of and development of those communities. And we see the evidence, but now we, as the other colleagues on the panel are saying, now we need to go to scale. We need to build the ecosystems, we need to build this fellowship portfolio and aggregate all these initiatives into those ecosystems, so those young men and women who want to be these change makers, maybe they want to stay in the urban area, maybe they get inspired to go back to the rural area. From our side, we want to see more of them coming back into the rural areas or staying in the rural areas and leading the change and the transformation of those communities.
Excellent. What a way of ending. Another round of applause, please, for our panelists. Excellent. Yeah. Very, very inspiring remarks, and with great examples of work that is happening on the ground. So this session, I'll open it up to the floor, so that we can ask our panelists any questions that we may have for any further discussions. Somebody can help me with the microphone. Oh yeah, at the back. Okay, gentleman at the back. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Oxford Osebonsu. I'm from Ghana. I work on one of the biggest youth agency as a project director. And my question is to all the panelists. The first question is, what is the objective for coaching and mentoring youth in agriculture. What are we looking at? Are we looking at having them to take the soft angle, be tech enthusiasts, or we want them to do the core thing in agriculture, being the farmers, and what are they to do on the value chain? That's my first question. And my second question goes to when you mention about you want to work with government agency, what is your motivation? Why do you want to work with government agency? And again, the mechanization centers that you want to set it up, how do you want it to be done? And what kind of arrangement and partnership collaboration that you are going to put in place to make that happen?
Thank you. We can take another 2 questions before we come to the panelists. There's a lady at the back. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayola Oluwafemi from Famabe Agro. My question goes thus. I've come across a lot of agriculture, and I realize that it gets to a point, there's age limits. If we are trying to support women, why are we pegging an age limit? You see 18 to 35 in some businesses. Is there a way we can work around that so that it can help more women? Because more women might start their businesses at a older age, like they should be deprived of participating in any forum that can also improve their businesses. So what can we do to ensure that we don't have age limits in those businesses? Thank you.
One more.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel. I'm from Narenzi International Limited. My question goes to the rural inclusion fact. Once I have came across, let's say 12-year-old or 11, a girl who is pregnant in the farms. So what are the policies around that? Because it seems that they are being led to a different direction from the beginning based on these young pregnancies. Thank you.
Excellent. So yeah, I'll let my panel feel free to take any of the questions that you're comfortable with, but just to recap, there's a question about the mentorship. What is the goal? Where are we seeing the young people sitting very well when we mentor them? Is it in production? Is it up on value chains? And then there's a question on collaborations with government. What's the best way, in your view, to collaborate with governments? Then there's a question on the age limits. Can we open that up, especially for women? Maybe that will go to Ndidi. And then there's the rural policies that should protect, like pregnancy and all of that. Over to you. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, let me start with the questions that I feel I have a intelligent response based on evidence. One, the issue around mentorship and the issue around skills building. I think it's really important to understand where Heifer's coming from. We are looking at technical skills, we're looking at business skills in agriculture, but we also know that there are issues regarding soft skills, which I think are real skills, about how you think about the technology that you're promoting. You're thinking about it from a business perspective, but you're also thinking about it from a communications and a marketing perspective. And you're also putting yourself forward in terms as the person who is elevating your pitch. It has to be all of that. It can't be just technical and it can't be just business. And if we think about the countries that we work in, we have to understand the context of the countries that our youth are working in and what are the barriers. And we have to talk about that. Many of them come from families that don't want them to work in agriculture. So what are the ways, right, that technology that they're adroit at can be brought forward? So these are all the kinds of things that we're talking about mentorship. And it takes time, it takes investment, And I don't think donors do enough to invest in that, because if you did, it would create the foundation by which their technical skills then get amplified. So that's one thing in my view around mentorship and our experience at Heifer, and also in other places that I've worked in. The other thing around the question about government, you know, just in the last day, right, we've been talking about the youth bulge, and we've been talking about it being the demographic dividend. Well, that's what governments are talking about. And if we're going to be working with youth and women, how do we scale? How do we make sure, right, that they reach the profitability that they need to succeed? The way that Heifer works is we're looking at smallholder farmer families getting a sustainable living income. That's profitability. And we believe that we cannot do it by ourselves. Working in partnership with government that has a ministry for labor and skills that wants to ensure that its youth actually improves is for us a great way to ensure that we reach scale together with government. And we will give the government, right, all of the applause for doing that, while we end up then achieving what we want to achieve in terms of our mission.
Excellent, thank you for those. Any other, Simon?
Okay. There we go. So a couple of additional points from my side. First of all, I think this mentorship, we need to break it down into different subcategories, because these young entrepreneurs need a range of types of skills. They need business skills, they need skills in how to access loans and investment. So there's a whole bunch of, let's say, that sort of kind of finance, business, entrepreneurship kind of skill building that needs mentoring. But for us in the rural areas, they also need technical mentoring as well. They need to understand what kinds of pests and diseases are likely to emerge as they help the farmers and how to deal with them. They need to understand what good agricultural practices are and how to support the farmers in growing. They need to understand what quality inputs are and how to, you know, manage for fake inputs and things like that. So there's a range of different types of mentorship that are aimed at then enabling both the entrepreneurs who are working with the farmers, but the farmers themselves to become commercial and commercially successful. So the objective, or the goal, if you like, is commercial transformation of rural areas. We see youth fleeing away from the rural areas right now in vast numbers because the lifestyle that their parents have is not attractive to them. But we need farmers for the future. But those farmers have to be commercially successful farmers if we're going to have thriving rural communities. So it's really critically important. And now we're dealing with climate change, which is making that objective of becoming a commercially successful farmer in rural areas even more challenging. Yesterday evening, I was at an event organized by a new coalition called the CASH Coalition, which stands for Climate Action for Smallholder Farmers, in Nairobi. And they've just done a Voice of the Farmer survey, which I believe is about to be released publicly. So CASH Coalition, Voice of the Farmer survey, write it down, Google it, it'll be coming up soon. And the emerging results of that are that farmers are very, very aware of the very real impacts and consequences of climate change and are looking desperately for help in how to deal with that. They want to remain as farmers, many of them, especially youth from those communities. Many of them want to stay in those communities. But if that doesn't change, if they're not provided the mentorship and advice and support to help deal with these rapidly growing challenges, they're not going to stay. And then we're in for really, really big problems in the future. Final thing I want to say on the government side is it comes back to the ecosystem point again. I was really impressed with what Lawrence Haddad said in the opening plenary with his 7-point plan. You could take that 7-point plan and apply it to youth, agri and food entrepreneurship, going all the way from collecting the data, understanding where funds are flowing, what the results of those funds are leading to, where the gaps are, and how to plug the gaps. And that's exactly what the youth agri-food ecosystem initiatives are trying to deal with. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. I agree with all the comments that have been made by the panelists, and I'll just add 2 things. I think for the issue around early childhood pregnancies and young ladies who are vulnerable, I think it's really important that as we design programs, we explicitly include safe spaces for our girls and specifically address this issue of sexual harassment and intimidation, because I see this across the board. And in fact, in every program I'm part of now, I actually say, please include training on this. Also, so the development agencies, the faith-based organizations, the private sector organizations working in these communities, as well as all entities. I think we take it for granted that people understand boundaries, and I think we're having a crisis at the moment with these issues. So I'm glad you brought it up. We need male champions, we need policies in place, and we need punishment for those who violate those policies. And in the organizations that I've started, I took it for granted that we had safe spaces for women and that people were aware. And over the last year, we've had to revise our policies, our training programs, and we've had to have very bold examples of firing any man or anybody who misbehaves when it comes to sexual harassment. And I think having a clear conscience around zero tolerance for bad behavior is what has to start from the top all the way down. I think we take it for granted. I personally took it for granted. Women-led organization, it's not happening in my organization. It was happening. So I say that it happens in all of our organizations. We have to wake up and do the right thing. The second thing I'll say is for mentoring. When we started Sahel Consulting, we realized most young people were not interested in agriculture. We would go to schools all over Nigeria, and we would ask young people, how many of you had fathers who were farmers or mothers who were farmers? Nobody would raise their hand. They were ashamed to be associated with food and agriculture as a profession. And so what we started to do was, through the Sahel Scholars Program, and we've had this for the last 7 years, show alternative examples of individuals who have entered the food ecosystem and have made money. Ultimately, young people in Africa want to make money. They want a better life for their children, like Simon said. And so by encouraging them to see the alternative narratives, showing them young people who are making money, doing the right thing through ethical interventions in the food ecosystem, showing them the full breadth of opportunities from farm to fork, and making it real through a full day on the campus, a full day with the faculty, but also bringing them to be interns at our company, we've started to see a change. And we expanded the Sahel Scholars Program from Nigeria to Africa. And I think we really need to work with our school system to change our curriculum. Agricultural science is no longer viable. We need agriculture as a business, and it should be mandatory in primary school, secondary school, universities. Every business school in Africa should have a curriculum around agribusiness. Every agriculture program should have a curriculum around business, and changing that nature of the ecosystem to food. I tell people make money in food. They might not make money in agriculture, but they will make money in food. And we're all in the food ecosystem. So let's change the language, but also bring in examples that are working and enable them to scale. And again, it's back to partnerships. And I look forward to working with all of you. We have the curriculum. It's working. Let's scale it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndidi. Let's go to Svein.
Yeah, so already very good remarks by my fellow panelists. So just a couple of additions from me on the question on objective and what part of the value chain. Well, the objective here is that the food system or the agriculture system is going through its fourth revolution right now, and that's a revolution driven by technology. And then we need to bring in the youth to help to speed that up. When it comes to the value chain, it's all parts of it. Look at the upstream part of it on producing fertilizer. For 100 years now, to produce nitrogen fertilizer, we've been using fossil fuel. Last week, we started up in our plant in Norway with green hydrogen. So green tech, so you use renewable energy and you get the hydrogen from water instead. So you can do zero emission fertilizer. Imagine what you can do on scale, how you can use solar power to produce fertilizers. That's on the upstream part. Think about what's happening in the field of the farmers with sensor technology that is available today, satellite imagery, to make the everyday life of the farmers much easier, where either with smartphones or mobile phones today, smallholder farmers can get access to technology that was just a few years ago only available to large-scale farmers. That is possible today, but then we need to scale it and get it in the hands of the farmers. And when I see the reach of the youth in order to get that done, it's a different mindset, and it happens at a different pace. And then we have the whole environmental challenge for the food system. 25 to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system, so we will not be able to get to reach the Paris Agreement without fixing the food system. And again, here we don't need new technology or any miracles. We need a full value chain approach to it. We need trust and we need collaboration. And what I see from the youth today and how they communicate and how they work around this, they don't seem to see the same barriers that we do in businesses today. So we also need that inspiration, the drive to get this done together and to do it fast. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. Those are very noble points from our panelists. So probably we'll do one more round of questions. We still have some time before our lunch. One more round of questions, and then they'll react to them, and then we'll get closing. Gentleman ahead here. Just give the microphones here.
Thank you so much to our panelists. My name is Bonki Safari. I work for Recall to International. I'm from DRC Congo, and I'm overseeing a regional program, Generation Africa, which is a program that really brings youth at the center of what we want to shape like our food system currently and for the future. And our program just really relying on giving youth the option. I'm taking from the question that our colleague was asking here from Ghana. We are giving youth opportunities to choose, to have alternatives. And from these alternatives, we are giving them opportunity to be also ready to work in the food system from other entrepreneurs. And another option to make them really entrepreneurs in the food system. Now, my question is this to Simon. What are the strategy that we are putting in place just to create awareness on the other side of, rather than making them entrepreneur, but to be also ready to work within the food system to other entrepreneurs in the food system? This is one of the trick questions for me in this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Even though you have a comment as well, it doesn't have to be a question or an answer to a question that has been asked.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sholakbe Akinpelu, and I'm CEO Harvest. We are gender-focused, and we fund smallholder female farmers in Nigeria. So my question, it is about monitoring and evaluation and how ecosystem leaders can, contribute to that. From experience, a lot of funders, private sector, public sector, they're willing to fund, but a lot of them, had complained about how, previous funds were not exactly, well appropriated for. And you realize that this then acts as a blocker, for, other people with clear intentions. So my question is, how can ecosystem leaders help work with, funding such that monitoring and evaluation is accurate and it is well accounted for? My second question would be, I'll make that quick, would be around the struggles of an average African female farmer. It's almost endless, and as a gender mainstreamer, I find it really hard to stay somewhere because they struggle with quite a lot. Time poverty, my brother over there mentioned, child abuse, menstrual poverty, and a lot. How can we, find a wholesome solution for them such that all of these do not disrupt how they contribute to the food systems? Thank you.
One more. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Nick Blumenthal, and I'm actually here as part of one of the youth programs that provide the mentorship and the enablement that we've been talking about today, and I appreciate all of your perspectives. We're a group of 15 individuals from all around the world, and it's because of organizations like yours that have dedicated their support and mentorship that we have been able to thrive, and that those of us from around the world are enabled to be here today and learn from these incredible opportunities and experiences. It was mentioned earlier along the panel of the need to almost aggregate many of these fellowship programs that provide these opportunities, and I was hoping for perhaps clarification on what exactly that term means. Does it mean to provide further investment on behalf of public and private sector to create more robust experiences for youth individuals and aspiring leaders? Does it mean that we should create opportunities so that those individuals that are interested in being leaders but don't necessarily have the resources to overcome that initial first hurdle, is that the sort of empowerment that we're discussing? So I just appreciate some clarification on that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can take those ones first. One more.
Thank you. My name is Ndidi. I'm from Senegal. I'm working as partnership and communication in Syngenta Foundation. My question, I like the idea to aggregate fellowship, but I would like to push this idea. How could we aggregate not only fellowship but partnership? Because sometimes we are doing the same thing, we are doing good, but somehow to maximize our resources and bring more impact. I think it's important to build strong partnership and leverage this partnership. My question is how to better work together. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll stop there and turn on to, and thanks the gentleman from Engine. The Engine is an initiative for Bayer, and Bayer is one of the partners of Generation Africa, and they're doing a good job of bringing these young people that come from all over the world to come and also exchange with us here. So yeah, to my panelists in a freestyle way, I think we can start with Simon because you were short to a question straight.
Shortlisted for a question. So thank you to our colleague from the DRC for that question about awareness. I think it's a complicated question to answer because we're so bombarded with information these days from so many social media sources, as well as, still there are a few newspapers around and other types of things. And then there are campaigns and so on. So trying to rise above the clutter, I think it's really hard, given just how dense and constant media outreach is. But I think one of the things that's really important, our colleagues also alluded to this already earlier, is the championship and the ambassadorship. I mean, that was something that we built into the design of Generation Africa right from the beginning with the inspiration of people like Svein Torre and Strive Masiwa and others. We need champions at a regional level, at a national level, at a community level, to say this is a good thing, and this is why it's a good thing, and this is how it can be a good thing for you, and so on, and create that culture of opportunity with leaders at the heart of it, ambassadors at the heart of it. But there's also a very important cultural element that I think is still underemphasized in Africa from my now 35 years of living in and working in Africa, which is also entrepreneurship is not always about succeeding every time. And there's still, I think, amongst vast numbers of Africans, a fear of entrepreneurship because I might fail. And then am I going to be humiliated? Am I going to be embarrassed? What's my family going to think? How am I going to show up in my local society? And we need to get rid of that fear of failure. We need to embrace the idea that, I mean, Strive Masiwa himself, I was in Zimbabwe in the mid-90s, I mentioned earlier, and that was exactly at the time where he was trying to get EcoNet going, and he was fighting battles with the government, battles with regulators, battles with investors for years to get EcoNet started. And now look at him. I mean, incredibly successful entrepreneur. If he hadn't had the tenacity to stay with it and say, I'm not going to walk away at the first time I fail, I'm going to keep and persist, EcoNet would not be the giant it has become, and Strive would not be the hero he has become. So that message, rippling all the way down into rural communities, is absolutely key. Maybe just one quick comment on the M&E point and this ecosystem point about how do we get the partnerships going together in a collaborative way. I think there's a tension. I mean, we want to support entrepreneurs to be thriving as individual entrepreneurs. That's really important. So we don't want to be so orchestrated in the ecosystem, collective action, let's say, that we stamp out that opportunity sense for individuals. But at the same time, we need to get away from this very uneven playing field where you have one donor-funded initiative or government-funded initiative that offers high subsidies over here that actually often undermines the opportunity that an entrepreneur is trying to build a commercial enterprise in the same place. So that idea of using data to create a level playing field, we need to keep advancing that. And that's where these ecosystem maps and policy studies that go with the ecosystem maps is critically important. And just on Nigeria itself, we did some work, I think about 3 years ago now, with IFPRI, and there's a report on their website and our website specifically about Nigeria's youth ecosystem and policy framework around youth entrepreneurship. So take a look at that. There's lots of work still to be done, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. Just building on Simon's response, starting with M&E, I really think that we have to build the capacity for local M&E in our countries. And there's money to be made in M&E. I see all the international organizations like Mathematica getting serious business in our countries and then hiring local enumerators. And while I love Mathematica, if there's Mathematica in the audience, well done. I think we need to replicate our own capacity on the ground in the continent in partnership with our research institutions, in partnership with our universities. And it's a challenge to us. You are an entrepreneur. Take on that challenge. Because I think if we build M&E into our organizations and we build the practice within our countries, then we raise the bar for the expectations for the interventions that we deliver on. I also think, honestly, that we have to do a lot more in self-policing each other to raise the trust in the local ecosystems. I often find that I'm defending organizations abroad because some have been engaging in fraudulent activities. And so now I pull my sisters and brothers aside and say, you know what, do good work, be patient, the funds will come. As we raise the excellence of our work and our delivery, then we can command higher dollars for the work we do. I am given a very strong message to international NGOs that the local NGOs are getting stronger. And if you're going to work in our countries, you have to work with us. And the funders also have to do the same. Put funds into local NGOs, local civil society organizations. Pay them what you pay the international NGOs so that we can attract the best talent and stop poaching our best staff, international NGOs. So that's aside, with all due respect. And then the second thing I'll say is with the point on partnerships, I think you've raised a very good point. We need to partner. And how can we partner? We have to leave our egos and logos at the door. And we have to be focused on delivering excellence. And I love a quote by Harry Truman I always use, which says, it's amazing what we can accomplish if we don't care who gets the credit. I think we have to start really focusing on what will it take to transform the food ecosystem in Africa. And if we don't care who gets the credit, then we're all going to work together. And I have to say that it takes leadership at the highest levels to say, let's come together. So when I started Africa Food Changemakers, I reached out to GoGettaz. I reached out to every single organization that's working in this space. And I said, let's partner. From the beginning, Simon can bear me witness. I'm going to call people out today. And it was important to say, let's do it together. We don't have to recreate new things. These are the gaps. How can we work together? And I think what we've successfully done is actually MOUs with Value for Her, with GoGettaz, with every organization that's working in this space. And what do? We share knowledge. We share data. We share resources. We share opportunities. Because the needs are so great. And no one organization can do it on its own. And so I'm appealing to you, if you work in youth and agriculture, and you work in any space of that, we as African Food Changemakers are ready to support you. We sign MOUs with you, we share data, we advertise your information, we promote your work, and we believe we can only do together. And having a one-stop shop, which we aim to be, where you can find everything about anything on our portal, and it's a free portal, is a step towards that. And I would love to encourage all of you to please get on the portal. It's www.afchub.org. I'm not on payroll. I'm doing this as a legacy project. So this is my free advertising because I'm not on payroll. But I think we really need to advance our work together. When we see countries that are doing well, and when we see communities that are doing well, it's because of partnership. And I'll end with a quote that also inspires me, and it's Michelle Obama's quote that says that communities thrive when women are valued. And we need more communities that thrive. So with youth and gender at the forefront, cross-cutting issues, embedding them in everything we do, our communities will thrive. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anything from Svein Torre? Yeah.
Well, I just want to, Ndidi, you said something that is incredibly important here on partnerships and the attitude at which we do this, that we do this together, because no one can do this alone. And if we go in as businesses or organizations and think this is CSR or advertising, it's never gonna work. And that was, I think Generation Africa is a good example of that. And we're both Strive and Agnes were very clear from day one that this isn't a small initiative with just a few partners. It's the outcome that matters here, and then it needs to be a broad coalition of partners. So we work according to what we want for Generation Africa as well, and to really drive youth entrepreneurship in the food system. And then for the businesses that are part of this, well, they will benefit from having more advanced and a thriving food system and a food business, but that shouldn't be the starting point of this. That we, what did you say? We leave our logos and egos at the door. I think that is key, because then we avoid the confusion as well, and we build trust around this, and then we get things done. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Surita.
Yeah, let me take the question about aggregation and what I mean by it. You know, I think if we can think about the collective wisdom of bringing fellows together wherever they are, they provide the kind of voice that will deal with some of the issues that are barriers in the ecosystem people were talking about, right? And I think providing them with that voice and not competing one against one fellowship being better than another, but recognizing that we all have different skills that we're providing. I mean, Simon just alluded to all of the different types of skills that you can have. And the other piece in this is someone raised about partnership. Partnerships don't happen by accident. You have to learn how to partner. You have to learn how to collaborate. You have to figure out what the incentives are for all of the different partners to get together. These fellowships can actually be a place where you can build those partnerships, test, prototype, learn from that, fail, right? But do that in an environment that is enabling. And I believe that when I hear about the different kinds of fellowships, including our own, we create the enabling environment for our entrepreneurs to succeed. How much better would it be, right, if we could scale in terms of thinking about the numbers of individuals who then have that ability to ripple across the youth. And one of the things that we've done in Ayute is we started in one country, and we've spread it to all the countries that we're working in. And I think at the end of the day, we'd like to partner with all of you on this.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists. And Nila of Bear, you're here, and there's a fellowship program that you run at Bear, and in partnership with Generation Africa. So this aggregation really is for you. And based on what Ndidi said, if we forget our logos at the door, then and focus on what we can achieve together with a common effort, then it becomes a really big thing. So the ecosystem development framework that Simon mentioned about is one way of doing these partnerships. We look at education and research institutions and what they offer in terms of curricula. Somebody here talked about the relevance of the education material and the M&E that comes with that. And you realize that TVETs and institutions are giving curricula that is aging and is not relevant to the job market. So when the young people get into the job market, they don't find anything. So it becomes very important to bring in the education and research institutions. And the gentleman who asked about how about preparing these young people for the jobs themselves, not just the entrepreneurship. And so we are bringing the education and research institutions to make sure that the curriculum are job ready, you know, the youth come out and plug into the job. We are working with the accelerators and incubators to make sure that whatever mentorship they need to give is the experience part, not just the education. We are working with financial institutions to ensure that the young people who don't have collateral and are looking for loans, they can find some finances. We are working with agribusiness large companies and saying that the small entrepreneurs who are aggregating from smallholder farmers can supply you. So they need to include these young youth-led businesses into their sourcing plans for raw materials. And these are the large processors who process and also who export products to other countries. We are working with the youth networks so that their voice can constantly be on the table of discussion when it comes to policy changes. We are working with the government institutions to ensure that the Ministry of Agriculture understands the needs of the youth. The Ministry of Youth are the mainstreamers of all these needs. The Ministry of ICT comes in for digitization, and the Ministry of Trade comes in to make sure that the cross-border trade can happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like us to end at this with just having one quick word from our panelists, again starting from Svein Torre and coming all the way, just as a way of encouraging and just something that you picked up that is an inspiration for this conversation. And then I would like to welcome you for the afternoon session from 2 to 4. We are going to have pomp, color, and a lot of noise. It's going to be rough in here because we'll be talking to the young people directly, and we'll speak in the language the young people understand. Half of this crowd will be young people who are to support finalists that are going to be talking to the judges so that we can select the winner for this year for the GoGettaz pitch. And the GoGettaz winner is going to be given the prize during the Youth Town Hall on Thursday by Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu at the plenary on Thursday morning from 9 o'clock. So over to you, Svein, for your wise words, last wise words.
Just quickly from me, and thank you, and thanks to my fellow panelists as well, and for the questions and comments, and for everyone attending. I think this is a nice appetizer for the finals taking place later on, and that's really one of my real highlights when I'm at the forum here, and to see this happening in reality. So to everyone here, I really encourage you to pay special attention to the session that we will have with the youth and with the finalists, and everyone that has made it there have done a tremendous effort just to get there, and then we will have 2 winners as well. So I look forward to that later on today. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, in the audience we have the young people who are raring to go and take over the food ecosystem, and then we have the enablers, the older generation. So I have 2 messages. For the young people, during COVID, my father gave me a quote. He said, "Mbeledeka jamadike," it's an Igbo phrase, which says, it's during times of stress that you know who is courageous, who has tenacity, and who is bold. Now, we're facing immense stress in the food and agriculture landscape. Climate crisis, coups, multiple seas on the African continent, and that's when we need courageous, visionary, bold, and resilient leaders. Young people are the biggest asset Africa has, and your generation is what's going to transform this food ecosystem. So please work with integrity, excellence, and passion. We look forward to celebrating your success, obviously on Thursday, but for the next few years, and seeing you rise to take your place on the global stage. And then for the enablers, it's a tough time, but we need you more than ever before to work with us as partners on the continent and to really see Africans taking the future of Africa into our hands. So it's really about partnership, but partnering with humility and partnering with the sense that you can trust your local partners to work alongside you to deliver excellent work. Because together we have to change this narrative of Africa from a hungry child to a successful female entrepreneur. I look forward to working with you to do that. Thank you very much.
So I leave with putting youth, women, and partnerships in the center. I also leave with the notion that, I represent an international NGO, and I also want you to know that we are working towards transforming ourselves to be more locally led, which means working in partnership with local organizations. And I would look to you all, if you have questions, to come out to our booth and talk to me and to my other colleagues so that we can build partnerships together. And thank you for this opportunity.
So I'm going to leave you with a cautionary note that some may feel is a little bit controversial. We're all talking here about trying to encourage and celebrate entrepreneurs who have high ambition and who have high talent. But in advanced countries right now, we're seeing the downside of meritocracy, with people who get left behind, who feel ashamed or humiliated because they don't have those abilities or they don't have the same drives. And I want to come back to what Ndidi said at the beginning about inclusion. The inclusion has to be comprehensive. It can't just be for those people who have the most talents and the most will. And we need to be embracing people with different kinds of abilities and different kinds of drives as part of this process. And that's not easy. But if we're going to do all the other things that we talked about today, that has to be also at the center of it. Thank you.
Super. What a way to end. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and engaging. And I think we connected with this conversation very well as a crowd. I'm really, really happy. Let's give a last round of applause to our very strong panel.